Out of all the factions in Root, they're probably the first one you were taught how to play. But despite their apparent simplicity, winning with the cats can be one of the hardest challenges in the entire game. Today, I'll be sharing the strategies, mindset, and decision-making tips you'll need to play the cats at a more competitive level. So if you're an intermediate player looking to build these orange point pinatas into the biggest threat at your table, then it's time to get good with the Marquise de Cat. My name is Nevakanezah, and while I may not be a tournament-winning Root professional, I play one on TV. If you're watching this video, it means that you're someone who has a fair number of games under their belt, and you've tried most or all of the other factions, but your cat performance just isn't where you want it to be. You're tired of spending the whole game losing pieces, and in your heart you long for something more. Isn't there a better way? Of course there is, otherwise you wouldn't have come to me. So long as your opponents aren't complete degenerates, we can get started. Let's begin by clearing up some common misconceptions. You are not the table police. The Marquise has perhaps the weakest action economy in the entire game. Each action you spent on move and battle was an action you didn't spend on your slow scoring engine that's been accumulating cardboard in your backline. When policing means sacrificing your score only to set up a third opponent, are you actually any good at it? Your crafting ability is bad. Cats are the only faction with a dedicated crafting piece. Every other faction gets to perform crafting with pieces they would be placing on the board anyway, while the Marquise has to choose between crafting and all of their other strategic interests. On top of that, you can't craft until your next turn, giving opponents a full round to shut down your plans. We can't afford to balance our buildings. Each of your buildings offers a specific contribution to your engine. Recruiters give control, sawmills give scoring, and workshops give crafting, which is like scoring, but worse. To win a game of Root, we need to score as fast as possible while retaining control of the game, two goals that can be achieved with only 3 recruiters and as many sawmills as we can find room for. Dominance is not a great alternative to victory points. It's true that cats are the best faction to try a dominance win, but being the cream of the crop doesn't mean you're going to compete when your progress towards victory can be reset every turn. Save the dom cards for the base factions, where the only threat to your win condition can be forced to skip their turn. Consolidating on the first turn is rarely productive. You've probably seen guides that suggest spending your first turn drawing your forces back, even to the point of putting all 3 of your actions into this choice. While it's tempting to think that consolidating will improve your defenses, in truth you're only wasting your own time while handing half of the map to your opponents. The first consideration we need to make when playing the cats is deciding whether to play the cats at all. The Marquise lacks the flexible strategies and action economy of factions like the Birds or Moles, and there's several matchups where they'll simply struggle too much to be worthwhile. The following situations can make the Marquise's life harder. Consider avoiding the cats if things don't add up in your favor.
The way we choose to set up our faction has huge ramifications for the rest of the game. Ask yourself, what space are you looking to control? How much risk are you willing to tolerate? How will your choices affect opponents who set up after you? And how are you going to leverage your starting position without getting punished for it? Now you are probably familiar with the standard setup for cats, but if you're not familiar with the advanced setup, it contains several key advantages. You get a warrior in every clearing on the board, you get an additional warrior in every clearing with your buildings, and you're no longer bound to the corner or edges of the map, and you can set up your 3 building locations anywhere you like. Next, for every map in the game, I'm going to give you some setup advice. This will be for both the base setup as well as advanced setup, or add set. As I do this, one of the most important things to keep in mind is what I like to call your control region. Think of your control region as all the clearings that you can reinforce with a single move from your keep, and which are connected to fewer of your opponent's clearings than they are to yours. Clearings like these are ones you can reliably defend throughout the game, and ones that your opponents will struggle to take away from you. For clearings that are important choke points or are very central to the board, you can help reinforce your control over them by placing recruiters there. On the autumn map, this top left corner gives you a lot of control over the center, gives you the bunny crafting in these positions, and it's the only one that's 4 clearings from the opposite corner, making you harder to reach. If you control these 2 clearings right here, then you make it very, very difficult for people to come after you, so focus on them. If you start in this bottom left clearing, you have similarly good control over the center, but you lose out on bunny crafting. This southern fox clearing here is the safest clearing on this entire map, so it's a great place to put a couple of sawmills. This top right clearing is one of the more popular selections for newer players because it gives you 2 build slots on your starting clearing, as well as access to the bunny crafting if you're using the base deck. The problem ends up being that your control region here gets divided by a large forest in the center, as your central clearings have no paths to reinforce each other.
Setting up in this bottom right corner is a mistake. Don't do it.
Playing with advanced setup, you actually open up a lot of options on the autumn map. There's not too many situations that are actually outright bad for you if you're still following the notion of your control region that you want to hold on to. The corner clearings from basic setup still work fine here, except now you can put your buildings where you want them to go all the way into the center instead of just having them in awkward clearings next to your keep. If you're feeling ambitious, you can take full advantage of how much space the Marquise takes up here. This layout, for example, takes control of the entire board and forces your opponents to set up in one of 2 remaining valid clearings. This has the effect of reserving half the map for yourself to build in once you've established your control region, and you can work backwards from where your opponents started. Keep in mind that in a 4-player game, the last player to set up is going to be able to set up anywhere on the map if the other 2 spaces are taken. In the winter map, you want to start in one of these 2 top corners, as this allows you to secure this entire top line with all of its double build slots for yourself. Be sure to place a recruiter on the far side on your first turn and start recruiting there immediately in order to make it unpalatable for opponents to come up here. I would recommend skipping out on these bottom corners here. While it may seem tempting to have your keep closer to this choke point in the center, opponents will take advantage of the northern strip that you left behind while you struggle to actually move out and reinforce anything you care about. In the advanced setup, I would still place your keep in these top corners, but you can also place it in one of these central clearings with better control of the south, but you lose a little bit of control over the northern strip. You can now choose to place your starting recruiter right on top of the southern choke point. Whichever setup you choose here, I recommend getting recruiters in these 2 choke points as soon as possible and making it as hard as possible for your opponents to break through this line. This way you reserve half the map to yourself and you have a ton of time to build in it. If you're playing lake map in the base game, I recommend this clearing in the top right. It's the only one that's 2 species away from the water, and by holding onto these choke points here, you can keep control of a rather large part of the map for a very long time. If you set up in these bottom clearings, it tends to leave your forces strung out, and it gives enemies direct paths to split your control region in half later in the game. If you're playing an advanced setup, you can play around more in the top space. Place your keep in the top half over here on the left side. If you place it on the right side, opponents are allowed to start in this top right corner, and it will make things difficult for you later. By setting up here, you can place a starting recruiter directly in the center choke point, which allows you to control both of these top areas by setting up recruiters here and here. This way you can hold half of the map to yourself, and making your opponents work twice as hard to take this space back from you. If you're feeling ambitious and you're not afraid of taking a lot of fights, then you can set your keep directly in the center and apply as much pressure as possible onto both sides of this map. This way your opponents will have a hard time kicking you out of here, but you're going to be attacked a lot because people need to get through here. On the mountain map in the base game, place your keep in the top left here. This avoids the river if you're playing with otters. It allows you to choke off the left-hand side of the board to yourself, and exerts control over the mountain pass. If you're playing with advanced setup, placing your keep in one of the clearings adjacent to the pass buys you a little more space at the cost of taking a few more hits, which you can tolerate now. Placing your keep and recruiter in the center of the pass is a very aggressive strategy that can pay off very well so long as you're up against only one red faction or none whatsoever. The first 3 turns en route are enormously important to us, as they're the only time where we can expect to be left alone as everyone else sets up their engine. As the Marquise, we need to take advantage of this time by preventing early threats to our control region, maintaining our scoring tempo, and reinforcing our stronger starting position just enough to stay ahead of our opponents. In virtually every game as the Marquise, your turn 1 should be build, overwork, and build to put down a sawmill and a recruiter. The exception is if you're going to lose a building for doing it. If you don't have a card to overwork with right away, that's fine. Your first build should just be a sawmill in the clearing matching your hand. If you have a spare bird card, you can use it to battle any immediate threats, or you can use it to march if you need to consolidate on choke points or set up martial law. Recruiting on this first turn is less efficient than waiting until your third recruiter gets out. Sometimes, however, you find yourself simply needing more cats in a hurry. If you do need a lot of policing immediately, you can put off your second recruiter and build 2 of them on the next turn for no loss in efficiency. Keeping other players out of our space can actually be tricky. Sometimes a person just commits to breaking into your house, and you either have to pay the cost of tanking their game or learn to live with it and try to work around them. Try convincing your opponents that starting an eternal war on turn 1 may not be a rewarding strategy for either of you. The Woodland Alliance is a unique case here. If they set up in our clearings in these early turns, we'll be spending the entire game keeping them in check, while struggling to maintain our own scoring pace. The best option here is to control the revolt that they're trying to do on turn 2. Remove their starting sympathy until they're forced to either revolt in your opponent's space, or in a corner or edge clearing with limited connections where you can immediately set up martial law around their base. Forcing them to start on the wrong foot makes the Woodland Alliance much easier to control over the long term, and it costs you far less effort than shutting down an Alliance player who's got a big lead. This small example is a great introduction to another important idea, something I like to call passive policing. Every action you spend to stop another player is going to cost you something, whether it be actions, warriors, or cards. And because Root is a 4-player game, whenever 2 players fight, it benefits every other player who isn't fighting. With passive policing, the objective is to place ourselves in between our opponents and their goals, forcing them to spend their resources to get us out of the way. Because we aren't wasting actions and overextending starting fights, our opponents are impeded while your scoring pace remains intact. When it comes to slowing opponents, the cost of shutting someone down only accelerates as their engine builds. It's far more effective to do everything we can to trip them up as early as possible, while spending as little of our own effort to do so. Now, to do passive policing effectively can be quite difficult. It's very situational and requires a lot of knowledge, but there's a few rules of thumb I can go through to help you out. First up, check the boards. Many players find it quite easy to get engrossed in their plans at the clearing level. How am I going to get into this clearing? Who's going to rule it? How will I be able to win this battle? You might be looking this close at the board, when in reality you need to be looking this close at the board. We need to evaluate everything that's in play in order to understand what's possible and what needs to be addressed. Remember that everything that's face up in Root is public information. The decree, the discard stack, the coffin maker's card, the burrow, the vagabond satchel, the remaining craftable items, the outcast, and very importantly, the Woodland Alliance supporter stack. Each of these is public information that's going to tell us what our opponents can do on their turns and what they need. Use the information you find on their boards to plot out what their actual turn might look like. Consider the objectives they need or want to fulfill, and then look at ways of getting in the way of that while you proceed with the things you were going to do on your turn anyways.
Next up, be an unappealing target. When opponents have to choose between 2 different locations to either battle or move or rule, they're going to choose the one that presents the least threat or effort to them. Small tricks like these are what allow us to control our opponent's actions and buy us the time we need to get our engine set up without being attacked. Similarly, if you know opponents are going to come after you because you're ahead in the game, make it as expensive as possible to stop you by having your buildings distributed in as many clearings as possible. Having many warriors isn't really much of a deterrent, but forcing people to spend several turns worth of actions to fight you definitely is. Ultimately, passive policing is about understanding the cost-benefit ratio of our choices. While getting in our opponent's way, we want to avoid choices that would do more damage to us than it will to our opponents. We want to involve other players to split the work of policing people. We want to take early advantage of effects that will pay off in the long term, like martial law or hostility with the vagabond. We want to never give up our own scoring tempo if we can avoid it, and yes, occasionally, we want to go out and hit people first. Remember, there's no policing like free policing. Since most games of Root only go for 7 turns, turns 4 and 5 are our mid-game, where reliable strategies fall apart and you simply have to deal with what you're dealt. While no guide can accurately cover all the situations you're going to encounter in a typical Root mid-game, we can point out the priorities that we want to stick to during this time. First up, building from the outside in. We control the board at the beginning of the game, and we need to make use of that. Build inwards from the edge of your control region and force your opponents to grind their way into your space, and you make the most effective use of it while you have control of it. Next, we want to maintain our momentum and resources. Field hospitals is an enormous part of this. Think of field hospitals as a supplement and eventual replacement to your recruiting, as you can sustain the same number of warriors on the board by only spending cards instead of actions. As you reach the last few cats in your supply, you can start relying more on field hospitals and spend your recruit actions on other things. Our goal here is to reach turn 6 with pretty much all of our cats on the board, even if that means they're all stacked on the keep. Marquise warriors are the only ones that need to be recruited once and killed 3 times. Next, if you do lose something valuable, think carefully about whether it's worth the time and effort to rebuild it just as it was, or whether it's better to let it go and just carry on elsewhere. If the warriors that took out your building are still around, consider what they're likely to do on their next turn and decide whether they can be dissuaded passively or whether they need to be neutralized immediately. Our next priority during this time is to reach 20 victory points and have only 2 sawmills left to build on our board. These are the conditions we'll need to achieve in order to actually win in the endgame. If you're worried that all the sawmills you've been building are going to just accumulate free points for your enemies, don't be. The rate at which sawmills produce wood is pretty much perfectly matched by the cost of building new ones each turn. Let me show you. During turns 4 and 5, you're going to have a turn where you have 1 extra wood lying around. This is a great time to put down that second workshop you've been needing in order to craft that one nice card in your hand. Well, look at you. You finally made it. You're all the way at the endgame and you haven't been deleted yet. You've overcome one of the hardest challenges in all of Root and attained Cat Nirvana. Now it's time to actually seal the deal and win a game. If you reach this point, then you managed to retain control of your space and use it effectively. You controlled opposing threats before they ever started. You kept your scoring pace ahead of the table, and you managed to keep all of your resources on the board. And maybe, if you were thinking ahead, you managed to save several bird cards that you can use now for a burst of actions in the final turn. Well done! Now that you're in the home stretch, these final turns are about a few things. Firstly, not getting over-policed now that opponents need to slow you down. One of the best ways to do this, and honestly something that deserves its own guide, is talking to your opponents. Try to convince them that they need you around, or if they damage you too much, you're going to have to focus on rebuilding rather than stopping other potential threats at the table. If you know they're going to come after you anyway, try building some sacrificial buildings out in the middle of nowhere that you can abandon, but will feel nice for your opponents to destroy instead of the sawmills that you want to keep around. Next, we'll need to make sure that no one else reaches 30 before we have a chance to. Talking to the other players is very important here, and making sure that no one can get by if you're getting hit. And all that passive policing work you've done up till now should have trained you to figure out who actually has a chance of winning. Lastly, and most importantly, we need to find space to build our last few sawmills to get us across the finish line in 30 points. The cat ball you've been accumulating on your keep was built for this moment. The ocean of sawmills you've accumulated all game was built for this moment. Your opponents can't kill enough sawmills to cut off your wood supply. They can't destroy enough cats to prevent you from ruling. Swing your enormous ball of fur across the map, find an open building space, and win the game. Congratulations, you earned it. And if you were not so lucky and things didn't go your way or opponents weren't willing to work with you, well, don't worry. No one wins every game. What's important is that you played your best and stayed in good spirits, that you made decisions you could stand behind, or you could look back and point out where things went wrong and how you can improve for the next time. Now is a great time to talk to your opponents and go over how things could have gone differently for you and where you could improve. Because it's only through practice and careful self-analysis that we finally, mercifully, get good. If you made it this far, then thank you very much for watching this video. It took a long time to make. If you liked it, consider giving it a thumbs up or whatever it is. I don't make these for ad revenue or to grow this channel. I make them because people enjoy them, and the best way you can show me you enjoyed this video is by succumbing to our corporate overlords. Hell, if this video gets 100 likes, maybe that's enough for me to make another one. I'd also like to thank the people currently on screen here, because they were instrumental in helping write this script from the first place, and hopefully I've represented their opinions well. Farewell, and good luck.